Football gets us talking, so let's get talking. Right then, today's episode is the good old days. Okay, the good old days. Now, I often hear people talking about how much better the football was back in the old days. But the thing is, was it necessarily better? All of us have a nostalgic gene inside of us, and we all look at things the way that they were, or things that we used to, and we prefer them. Sometimes we do, actually, sometimes we don't. But quite often we do, and we often look through what we say are rose-tinted glasses and sort of think, yeah, everything was better then, and we often ignore the bad things. And I'm one of those that lives in the past as well. I'm always talking in terms of pounds, shillings and pence. I'm always talking in terms of feet and inches, which is a measurement that we're getting rid of here in Britain. I know in America it's still going strong, but we're slowly getting rid of it. But I still use it, just like I still use pounds and ounces rather than kilograms and grams. I love miles. So, at the end of the day, is that stuff any better than metric? It's just what I'm used to. It doesn't make it any better. And I feel the same when it comes to football. So, what is it that people seem to prefer about the old days? You know, I always see people talking about, in the good old days this, the good old days that. But what were the good old days? What is it that they liked? Now, this is what I'm picking up as to stuff from the old days. It's what I call hustle and bustle football. Quite often when I'm looking on Facebook or, looking on Twitter or, getting into discussions, I hear everybody talking about, it was proper football then, proper football in the old days. I understand that because sometimes I watch the old football matches on YouTube. I've got loads and loads of videos that I recorded from way back in the day and VHS DVDs that I bought back in the day. There is a difference between the football back then and the football now. I think back in the old days, when I say the old days, by the way, I'm sort of talking the 1980s, 1970s, maybe the early part of the 90s, but generally speaking, 60s, 70s and 80s. There was a lot more sort of kick and rush football then. A lot of people liked that. And I've seen people say, what they hate about today is all this noncy, ticky-tacky, passing, airy-fairy football. But I prefer that. I like to see teams play out from the back, yeah? When I watch the old football, the 70s and the 80s stuff, and yeah, I can understand that there is a bit of excitement in there, but the skill factor to me is actually quite low. Yes, you had certain players, we all know about Stan Bowles, players like George Best and Frank Worthington that did have a lot of skill, but a lot of the players didn't. When the ball came to them, it was like a hot potato. They didn't like it. What used to happen all the time, the defenders would get the ball and just give it back to the goalkeeper. In those days, the goalkeeper could pick it up from a back pass, and he would just get the ball and just blast it downfield. The defenders getting the ball, it was just knocked forward aimlessly. Players in midfield, the ball just knocked forward aimlessly. Players just used to run down the wing, get to the byline and cross it. And that's fair enough. It worked. It is exciting. I understand that because, you get more goal-mouth incidents because the ball gets there quicker. So when people prefer that, I understand that. Me personally, I prefer the way it is now. I do like it when the goalkeeper gets it and he throws it to his fullback, who then turns inside and passes it to somebody, maybe his centre-back. Your holding midfielder comes forward and collects it, turns, plays it on the floor to maybe the left wing back. I like that. I like that sort of football. And I remember we used to always notice the difference between the football over here in England and the continental style whenever you was watching an international match or a European Cup match or something, of how they kept the ball down on the floor and we just blasted it in the air. It worked, but by the same token, I just prefer that skillful style. I'll never forget once when I went on a footballing trip as a 12-year-old, 1981. We went to Holland. And I remember that I was playing for the school team and we played another school team from England. And the ball was just going boom, 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 like pinball. It was 7-a-side, by the way. And the ball was just all over the place, in the air, hitting here, hitting there, players just running around like headless chickens. And I'll always remember when two Dutch sides played each other and they kicked off and one of them passed it back to a really big, tall central defender, and he, stopped the ball, looked up, took a couple of yards with the ball and then played a nice little pass to the left. And I always remember thinking, wow, these guys can play football already. The difference was just immense. And I think that's where I've always had this appreciation for football, possession football. I just prefer it. That's just me. But I understand others don't. For example, like the goalkeeper as well. I remember Dave Besant playing for England in a friendly. It was about, let me see, this would have been about 1988, 89. I think it was 89 actually. And it was either against Italy or Yugoslavia. It was 89. And I remember during the first half, England were trying to start playing that possession football. The goal kicks and the clearances from the keeper. Instead of just knocking it long as we used to do, they were sort of playing out from the back. And then at half-time, Dave Besant came on as a substitute, the England goalkeeper. And I remember he got the ball, bounced it a couple of times and knocked it downfield. And a really big cheer went up from the crowd, because they liked that. That's what they wanted to see. They didn't like the way that the goalkeeper in the first half, I forget who it was rolling it out to a defender who was then playing it. It's just what we're used to. I don't think it's better. It's just what we're used to. I'm thinking of hard men. That's another thing that people seem to prefer about the old days. Oh, proper tackles, your Chopper Harris and your Billy Bremners and your Norman Bitey Legs Hunters and, people like that. Graham Souness, Vinnie Jones. These players were just thugs on a pitch. Some of them could play. I'm not going to say that they were all nonsense, but, I look back at it and I think, why do we glorify people just going in for crunching tackles? Can't you play football? Is that what football is about to you? Just crunching somebody? Maybe it is. I appreciate the passion. And yes, okay, maybe, it involved a lot more physical substance. But was it better, though? Is that really better? Is that for people that can't play, that they just go in and throw themselves around? See, like I said before, I prefer the midfielders to get the ball and play it. I understand the crunching tackles, and I used to like it at the time because that's all I knew. But when I look back at it now, I just think it's dangerous, and I think it's just once again, players with limited ability can do that. Now, it's not to say that everybody has to be a superstar, because any fan will tell you they can put up with a lack of ability, but what we won't do is put up with a lack of, not urgency, but let's say a lack of commitment. And the thing about these players that used to throw themselves about like that is it showed their commitment. So I get it. Not everybody's going to be as talented as somebody like Glenn Hoddle or Paul Gascoigne. I get that. But what I am saying is, I just think that we used to place too much emphasis on players that were like that. Their shortcomings were overlooked because they'd throw themselves into tackles, crunching tackles, and the crowd loved it. And like I said, I can see why people might like it, but was it better? Not for me. Not for me. So I'm not into that. I prefer what's going on now. What I do prefer about those days, though, so this is where modern football falls short, is I'm sick of this play acting stuff. Sick of a guy getting just touched and he's rolling on the floor like he's been shot. And you know that he's not injured. Yeah, you know he's not injured. And then he gets up and takes the free kick himself. So the slightest touch and they throw themselves, So they make the noise, they throw their arms out, drop on the floor. I'm sick of that. And I think the referees need to start booking players for that. I know that they do, but they need to do it more. And you know who else needs to make a stand? The pundits. Because sometimes when I'm watching the highlights or even watching the live game, when they show the incident again, all you hear is, oh, well, there was contact. And it's like, so what if there's contact? Was it a foul? And was that contact enough to make this player drop on the floor and roll over? I'm not interested in whether it's contact or not. Was it a foul? And is that player justified for rolling over like that? And quite often they're not. They're just tapped and they go down. Why do they do it? Because if you don't go down, you don't get the penalty or the free kick. And it doesn't help when the commentators say, or the pundits say, well, there was contact, he's entitled to go down. Because all you're now doing is encouraging people to go down. That is something in the modern game that isn't good, and that needs to change. Okay, so I'm with the old boys there, yeah? I've looked back at some stuff and I've seen some players get some horrendous tackles back in the old days, and they get up and get on with it. So yeah, I'm with the old brigade there. 3 p.m. kickoffs, yeah, I get that. There's too much of these evening kickoffs and Sunday afternoons, and games change for Monday for Sky Television and all that. Yeah, I'm not into that. That irritates me as well. 3 p.m. kickoffs, yeah, I suppose I do prefer that. So I'm with old school there. FA Cup meant something. Yes, the FA Cup really did mean something back then, and I'm going to do a podcast on that shortly, so watch this space. Now, the FA Cup, teams used to field full-strength teams for it, but nowadays they don't. Nowadays, everybody's more interested in their league position. Now, don't get me wrong. If a small non-league or a lower division team draw one of the big boys in the FA Cup, one of the big top 6 Premier sides. So, for example, let's just say Torquay United draw Liverpool, or let's say Dover Athletic draw Manchester City, then yes, of course, I understand that there's going to be a lot of interest for the small team. But generally speaking, if they play somebody on their same level, if Dover Athletic play Sutton United, if Torquay United play somebody like Leyton Orient, on the same level, the crowds are down, and quite often a weakened side is field. But like I said, I'll go into that on a future podcast. So the FA Cup meant something. Yep, I'm into that. Teams would rather finish high up in the league than go and win the cup. Muddy pitches. This is another one that people seem to prefer. Oh, look at those proper pitches. It's like they're playing on snooker tables now. Anyone can play on a snooker table. Well, I understand why people say they're muddy pitches. You know, it looks like it's a real game. And back in the day when I played, you used to squelch in mud. When you came off the pitch, your socks, your legs, everything was just covered in mud. In fact, one of the things you had to do was bang your boots together just to get all the mud off. Yeah, because there was so much of it. I understand that. I used to enjoy the muddy pitches. But were they better? No, they weren't. It's just that that's all we knew. Yeah. Technology seems to have moved on. The groundsmen know how to keep pitches green all year round now. Back in the day when I first started watching it, the pitches were green for like the first month of the season and the last month. And it was a mud bath in between. I prefer how the pitches are now, yeah? And it's more conducive to playing possession football as well. Maybe that's why they lumped it in the old days, because there was nothing to do other than just lump it, because if you tried to run with it, the pitch would hold you up. All that mud would just hold you up. So I'm team new school here, yeah? The pitches are better. It's more conducive to good football. Terracing. I'm going to go into one of these with old and new stadiums. So I'll just give a small taster of my view of stadiums at the moment. But I will go into one on stadiums in full. But to me, a lot of people prefer the terracing, how it used to be. For those of you that don't know what I mean by that, that's where you used to stand at football and they used to cram as many of you in as possible, crammed like sardines in a tin. I know that in some lower division football, and by that I mean League 1 and League 2 in England, plus non-league football, I know that some stadiums still have terracing, but in the top 2 divisions in England, the Premier League and the Championship, you're not allowed to have standing space anymore. Although they are thinking of bringing back safe standing, which is different to the old terracing. I used to go on the terracing back in the day, but not because I thought it was better than seats, it's because it was cheaper. And in fact, the last 2 or 3 seasons that they had standing space at my favourite team, Crystal Palace, the last 2 or 3 seasons that we had terracing, I did spend more time in the seats than the terracing. The terracing was cheaper, but, I preferred the comfort of the seats. I'm Team New School here. I prefer the seats. Fewer games on Match of the Day and things like that. I do think that we get too much football on television. Yes, it's good if you're armchair fans and you want to sit and watch it, that's fine. Or you want to watch games that you wouldn't otherwise see. Because let's face it, if we were all kicking off at 3 o'clock again, you only get to see your game and whatever's recorded, which back in the day used to only be about 2 games a week. So, yes, it's better now in the sense that you can see games that you wouldn't have otherwise seen. But by the same token, I think you see too much. And I think that is what has kind of reduced people's interest in it. And when I say that, what I mean is a lot of people now are only interested in their own team. Back in the day, of course you loved your team, but you would also watch other teams as well for the simple fact that that's all that was on the box. But now, I think that people have become quite insular because there's just too much football on there, so you can afford to pick and choose. Back in the day, it was a treat to have a game on. And in fact, when I first started watching football in the mid-70s, the only live game, the only domestic live game was the FA Cup final. And then you had the European finals that were live. And that's more or less it. Even a lot of the England qualifiers, they were not live. Some were not. You'd see the highlights later on that evening. Nowadays, they seem to be putting them on Sky Television. So it's not on terrestrial, but the fact of the matter is you can still get to watch those games. It's good in a way because we can't all get to Wembley. But having said that, sometimes it does sort of diminish it when you can watch it, when you can watch so many games live. I think it's saturated the market. I'm kind of torn there because, like I said, I get to see games that I wouldn't otherwise see. But then by the same token, it's like there's too much of it. It's too easy to see games. And I think that's why there were bigger crowds, in many places back in the day. Because A, there was nothing else to do. And B, if you didn't go to the game, you wouldn't see it. Because only a few games were recorded every week. And you didn't know who they were going to be. So there you go. One thing that people prefer about the old days as well is the plain kits, no sponsors, numbers 1 to 11, the goalkeeper wearing the same colour socks and shorts as the rest of the team, but just a different coloured jersey. Quite often that was just a green jersey. And it used to make me laugh because whenever we used to watch like Liverpool in Europe or whatever, Nottingham Forest in the European Cup, the other teams, the continental teams, they might be wearing all white, for example, and their goalkeeper will be wearing green shorts and yellow socks and a red top. Completely different to the rest of the team. That's now happening over here. I prefer it. I just think it makes the goalkeeper stand out. I like the squad numbers as well. I like to know that each man has his own number. I mean, these are small little things, but they are things that do grate a lot of people. I like the squad numbers. The shirt sponsoring, do I really care? I think I'm so used to squad numbers. I'm so used to shirt sponsors now that when I watch an old game with no shirt sponsor, the shirt seems a bit too plain for me. So I think I'm Team New School there. In fact, I'm Team New School in all of those 3 that I've just said. The plain kits with no sponsors, I prefer the sponsors. The numbers 1 to 11, I prefer the squad numbers that go up to 24, 25, 30, whatever. Goalkeepers with the same socks and shorts, I prefer them with different socks and shorts. But I think the way that the games have improved is that, I just think that the quality of the football's improved. I think the stadiums have improved with the seating, and, you know, people are moving from the old-fashioned ramshackle stadiums to these soulless bowls. But I do think in the long run we'll get used to that, and I will do that in my Stadiums Old or New podcast, so listen out for that. Pitches are better. I think overall football's better now. The quality of the football is better. I just think it's better now. I prefer the modern football to the old football. There are certain things, like I said, that the old days were better with, but I think generally speaking, I'm for the modern football era. Yeah, take out the play acting. I think that most things in the modern era are an improvement to how they were. So there you go. That's my opinion anyway, but let me know what you think. Right then, my friends, how did you see that? What did you think of today's topic? What did you think of today's discussion? I want to hear what you think. I know what I think, but I want to hear what you think. Leave some comments in the section below. Contact me on Twitter, and that is Football Soccer X. YouTube, Football Soccer X. Facebook, Football Soccer X. Instagram, Football Soccer Talk. Let me know what you think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What did I enlighten you with? What can you enlighten me with? Let's talk football. Let's keep this football family going worldwide. Looking forward to hearing from you, and looking forward to catching up with you next time. Adios.